I don't even know how to explain what I witnessed without sounding completely ridiculous, but I'm going to try and give it my best shot. I work as a chef, or rather, I used to. A personal chef, to be exact. I worked as a line cook in some dives for a few years, got some more experience, moved around a few places, and then ended up as a personal chef. This was in New York, by the way, just to give you some more context. I ended up bouncing around a few different clients, depending on recommendations people would give for me. Clients absolutely loved trying to sell me on to their friends. I worked like this for quite a while, until I was hired by quite a famous and wealthy man, who I will not be mentioning by name, to be his permanent personal chef. I would do his grocery shopping, prepare him free fresh meals a day, and then I would also end up attending to some other personal chores. I wasn't a live-in chef, which made this schedule quite grueling, as I would have to be up early in the morning and then basically be on standby for a long time throughout the day. Still though, it paid really good money. I want to say that this continued on like this for at least a year until the terms of the deal changed, I guess you could say. I had the option of declining, but this wealthy man, who I will refer to as T, asked me to carry out other chores for him in between my duties as a cook. He'd actually hired a whole array of staff by this point, which made my job a whole lot easier, but it meant I was not earning nearly as much as before. He was offering me a whole lot of money for what seemed like menial things at the time. He would give me envelopes and ask me to drive to an address and hand it to a specific resident, and that I would absolutely have to hand it to this exact person, and if that was not possible, then I was to bring it right back. I wasn't allowed to leave it with anyone but that person. Near the end, I remember I made an almost 16-hour road trip one time. This escalated over time. He would give me packages and ask me to drop them off at warehouses. He would provide me with a vehicle and ask me to drive and store it in a certain location. The rule was always no questions asked and do not check inside of whatever I give you. I made a lot of money and I was happy to do this. By this point, I was barely even cooking. I was basically just a personal errand boy. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I had some scares. Some encounters with really weird and sketchy people that were never ever explained to me, because of course I was not allowed to ask questions. I got held at gunpoint by one skittish guy, which was probably the second most terrifying moment of my life after what I'm about to tell you. I had a package for him and he was freaking out, saying he did not want it and to take it back. He asked me what was inside and of course I didn't know. He put the gun to my head, dragged me inside, and then forced me to open it right in front of him. I don't know if he thought it was going to explode or some other crazy shit. It just didn't seem right in the head. He was acting so irrationally. I told him who sent me, and I told him I was expressly told not to open the package myself. Just me saying the name of T made this guy freak out, and I really thought he was going to pull the trigger at multiple points. When I did finally give in and open up the package, I saw that it was just a box of clothes covered in mud and other dirt and stains. I think there was a mask in there too, along with some type of camcorder that was pretty ancient. Before I had a chance to take them out of the box and show the guy, he hit me with the gun, pushed me away, and told me to drive back home now or he would shoot me. Absolute crazy asshole. So, one day, I show up at my boss's request as usual, and he has this big ass truck he wants me to haul. For once in my life, it's not a haul out of state. He wants me to haul it upstate to some rural property he said was owned by a friend of his. He told me not to check inside. He warned me that the truck was a little bit old and was prone to squeaking and making funny noises, and so he told me that whatever I heard, I should pay it no mind and just keep on driving and not waste time. He told me the faster I got there, the more money he would pay me. I think it was going to be a 4-hour drive in total, and that was fine by me. He gave me the keys and some more detailed instructions, and I did as I was told. The place I pulled up to was truly in the middle of nowhere. There were not really any cars parked around the place that I could see, and I was not totally sure what to do now. I knocked on the door like I was told to do, but no one answered me, so I just tried calling my boss again. He told me not to worry. He told me to head to an entrance around the back of the property and drive the truck in there, and that someone would be outside to meet me. Well, this is the part where I don't remember all that much, and things become unbelievable and messed up. It was like something out of a nightmare, really. I remember getting out of the truck and knocking on the door. Then all of a sudden I felt a pain in my head and a dull aching. I think I'd just been hit in the back of my head with something heavy. I could feel that there was blood dripping from my head into my hair. I felt cold, really, really cold, and then I passed out. I don't remember seeing anyone or hearing any footsteps or anything like that. I never heard anyone talking before I passed out. The next thing that I remember, I wake up in some cold room that's made entirely out of stone, and it is massive. There are chairs set up at the far side to my left, like it's a stage play, and someone is expecting an audience. There is this giant, long, wooden dining table directly in front of me that spans around half the length of the room, and it is completely clear. Almost completely clear. There are no plates, no candles, no utensils, no dining cloth, no nothing. It's just a bare wooden table. But right there, in the center of the table, lying down lengthways, there is a man laying down on his back, and he is chained to the table. He's completely unconscious at the present moment, but he is completely naked and has both his arms and legs chained down to his sides. I started panicking, and I tried to scream, but I can't, because there is something covering my mouth. I tried to pull away from the chair I'm in, but I'm tied down too. I was trying my best just to scream and scream, but it was no use. And out of nowhere, the overhead light in the room just suddenly flickers on, and it's like a high-powered spotlight, and it is blinding. It's making my eyes water. It's lighting up the entire table, and where I am too. And then just a few seconds later, a kind of alarm or something goes off. It's like someone is ringing a bell, or something like that, and a crowd of people begin to filter in, and they just sat down. They were all wearing suits in these elaborate dresses, like they were attending a gala, but on their faces, each and every single one of them is wearing a mask. They were enough to obscure the top half of their faces, leaving only their eyes visible on top. Then they kind of curved weirdly and covered parts of the lower face, but left a distinct opening for their mouths to be completely visible. They looked to be made out of wood and were carved or something. Each and every single mask was different and seemed to have a different carving. I didn't exactly have time to analyze them all, so I could not be sure, but from the first glance, they all looked different is what I'm trying to say. So I was trying to scream. I was screaming at them to help me, but they are just sitting there and watching me. Then one last man enters the room and walks over towards me. I recognize him almost instantly. It's my boss. He is wearing pants, but he is shirtless. His eyes look completely different from just this morning. They look yellow. They look like they are bigger than any human eyes I've ever seen before. His face looked different. His skin looked different. Half of it seemed to be normal, but then one half of his face was a completely different texture and looked to be tinged some kind of a dark green. His skin looked scaly all over his body. He knelt down to where I was, and he spoke to me at length, but I don't remember a lot of what he said because I just kept trying to scream and struggle, and by the end I felt really, really lightheaded. I know I definitely passed out at least one more time. I remember that he told me to be quiet and just watch. Said something about him needing a witness, otherwise it wasn't right. Whatever that meant made absolutely no sense to me. It still doesn't to this day. I never got to ask any questions. He told me that the people that were watching were friends and family. Those people were so creepy. Not once during all of this did they flinch or make a sound. They just watched the entire time. My boss told me that this was my last assignment, to be a witness for him. That if I stayed quiet and did not squirm, then I would get a bonus and he would just let me go. I got real quiet after that. I remember I passed out after he started talking, and when I came to, the man on the table was now awake. He had something in his mouth now that was making his voice muffled, and he was trying to break free. He turned and stared into my eyes, and it was like he was begging me for help. I could see his eyes just watering. But even if I wanted to help him, there was nothing I could do. I was stuck there just as much as he was. My boss was addressing the crowd of people and walked back over to the center of the table on the opposite side of me. He spoke in this loud and bouncy voice like he was a showman introducing the show to his guests. He seemed really genuinely excited. He told them that it was about to start and that no one would be allowed outside of the room until it was all over. I had to just sit there and watch each and every single second of this. No matter how much I pinched my skin to try and distract myself, or how much I attempted to zone out and daydream, none of it would work. And I saw the most bizarre thing that I know no one will believe. My boss, he started to choke, seemingly out of nowhere, on nothing at all. I never saw him eat anything or put anything in his mouth. He just started making choking sounds. His pupils got bigger and bigger as he started clutching at his own throat, and he was making sounds like there was something lodged in there that he was choking on. The blood vessels in his eyes started to become strained to the point that they looked like they were about to pop. He looked to be in absolute agony. And then, ever so slowly, I started to see this large lump start to form at the base of his throat. It looked like it was traveling upwards at an incredibly slow pace. There was saliva coming out of my boss's mouth the entire time he was choking. It looked more like bile than saliva. It was a mixture between yellow and a sickly green color. It looked thick and viscous, and by now, it was all over the table, near where the man was chained down. That lump in my boss's throat began to travel further and further upwards. It looked massive. It looked like it was the size of a bowling ball, but it was a different shape. As this kept on happening, my boss's skin started to change more and more. Before, only half of his face and body were a different color, but by the end, his entire body had become that same greenish color, and the rest of his skin became more coarse and scaly to match. It looked as if the skin on his body, the human skin, was just ripping itself and tearing itself off to allow the skin below it to move to the surface. It was like he was just wearing a suit of skin that was just ripping apart. At one point, my boss has his mouth wide open as far as it will go, but farther even. It looked like a snake unhinging its jaw, almost. It was so uncanny. It looked completely impossible. It looked like his jaw had dislocated itself. His entire body was shaking and trembling as this was happening. It looked like his mouth was struggling to stay open under some kind of pressure, and that he was fighting back just to keep it wrenched open. I could see the sweat dripping from his forehead, dripping from all over his body. There was a wet patch all over the crotch of his pants. And then I saw something big, ever so slowly starting to appear in his mouth right at the edge, ready to hit the floor. It looked like a white color that had been stained and dulled to be darker, almost to a gray, and it had something all over it. That same viscous, mucus-like fluid that was all over the table. And all at once, all of that pressure just released, and this thing fell into my boss's hands. He was panting and still shaking, and it seemed almost as if most of his energy had been sapped away by whatever the fuck just happened. I have no idea to this day what that was. The shape of it, I can only describe it as a large egg, bigger than any kind of egg I'd ever seen before in my entire life. He just stands there, catching his breath for a few minutes, and then he slowly walks right up to the man strapped down to the table and rips off whatever was covering his mouth. The man on the table instantly started pleading for his life, offering money, telling them he would keep his mouth shut, telling them all kinds of elaborate favors that he could do for them, strings he could pull for them. But within a few seconds, his pleas became muffled once again, because my boss had taken this egg or whatever it was and jammed it into the man's mouth. The man on the table was trying to scream, but it would not work. This thing was covering everything. This egg would not fit, obviously, so my boss took it back up, set it aside on the table, and then placed 2 hands on the man's face. He placed one hand on his lower jaw, and the other one just below the man's top lip. The man tried to bite him, but my boss did not even react, and I did not see the man on the table draw any blood from him. And then boom, as quick as a flash, I just heard this horrible snapping sound. And all of a sudden, this man's lower jaw was, I don't even know how to say it. It was not fastened on anymore. It was looser, and my boss began ramming this egg thing down the man's throat again and again, and this time, it made it part way into the man's mouth. I think that first click had killed the man on the table. I'm not sure if it was instantly or not. I pray that he died immediately and painlessly. The whole time that I was watching this, I could do nothing but sob. But my boss just kept on grabbing his jaw and just pulling and yanking until it clicked and snapped again, and there was more space, and the egg got further and further into his mouth. The man on the table was not moving whatsoever. At one point, my boss had both hands wedged firmly into the man's mouth and down his throat, and was pushing and exhaling quite heavily. I don't remember how much time this took. I don't remember much of anything that night in regards to time. It all just felt like one big fever dream that simultaneously lasted 5 seconds in total, and almost seemed to drag on in slow motion for hours on end. I only have brief snippets of the rest of that night. I remember that nothing much happened for a while. I was just kind of in a daze. It felt like my vision was just blurring and going side to side and would not stay in one place. I remember my boss walking over to me. I don't know what he did or said, but my vision flashed in and out for a while afterwards. I remember he walked over to the crowd of people watching and stayed there for a while. I don't know if he was addressing them or what. He stayed there for a while, and eventually, they all stood up and gathered around the table, just staring at this man. This could have just been my imagination, because I know that not long after this, I passed out for the final time that night. But I could have sworn that I saw the stomach of that man chained down to the table start to rip. I heard this horrible squelching sound, and the stomach seemed to ever so slowly start to tear by itself, before there was just this big rush of pressure, and it was like there was just a hole blown in his stomach, like there was a sudden rupture, and all of the skin was just gone, and everything was visible. That is the last thing that I remember. I don't know how long I was out for, but when I woke back up again, I was at my boss's home, and when I realized this, I freaked the hell out and tried to rush outside, but the room was locked. My boss came inside the room not a few seconds later after all of my commotion. I tried to scramble away closer to the wall, and he told me not to be worried. He told me that no one was going to hurt me as long as I stayed quiet and listened. He threw me a wad of cash. It was a lot of money. He told me that more would be deposited into my account. He told me that it was my reward for being a witness. He said that all I had to do was stay silent and never come back. There was a lot more to it than that. He just didn't let me loose after a couple of sentences. He held me hostage in that room for over an hour, just talking at me about things, telling me what I was and was not allowed to do from here on out. I did what he said. I took the money. I left the state. I bought a house, and now I don't do much of anything anymore. I couldn't tell the police because Who the hell would believe me? Who would believe what sound like the ravings of a lunatic over the word of a powerful and well-liked man? I had no chance. I barely even go outside anymore. I get food ordered to my door. I tell them to just leave it there so I don't have to interact with anyone. I just stay home and sob and do nothing in my room. Some days I feel so paralyzed I just sit there and think and wonder if there was anything that I could do, anything at all. I decided to write this down here as the first step. Even if this is all I can do, even if no one believes me, I had to write down what happened to me here. I don't know what happened after I passed out. I was not allowed to leave my boss's home unsupervised. He had a security guard I had never seen before in my life escort me to my house, watch me pack up my things, and then he took me straight to the airport with a ticket already purchased under my name. I don't even remember the address where it all happened anymore. My head was that messed up, and it happened so long ago. I like to tell myself that I just lost my mind, and that it was all just a horrible nightmare, but I know that is not true. I hate myself. I hate everything. I would give anything to go back in time and never work for that man. I just feel so powerless. Okay, so this story did not happen to me personally. It was told to me by someone else. The city of Waycross in Georgia is the setting for the story. The municipality is within the area of Ware County. The county is a part of the Okefenokee Swamp and its borders. Like most southern towns, the younger crowd tend to spend the weekends down in wilderness, partying and hooking up. It was hot Georgia April when I arrived in the city. I was there to interview a park ranger from the Okefenokee Nature Preserve about an experience that he had. On this occasion, my contact was not there to meet me. Since this was considered a low-priority situation, I was allowed to do this on my own and send my report via fax to him, but my copies had to be destroyed after he confirmed that his was received. I pulled up to the witness's house, a medium-sized barn-style building out by Route 38. I knock on the door, and a man about a few years younger than me answers the door. We exchange our information, and I go inside to conduct my business. He tells me that he has been at his position for a few years now. Being in that swamp, he has seen and heard things that he cannot explain, but this one takes the cake. He asks me, "Do you believe in ghosts?" I tell him that I believe people have encounters with things unexplainable. He smirks and hands me a folder full of assorted papers. After last week, Mr. Anon, I believe that ghosts are real, and that there is something buried in that swamp. I open up the folder and skim over the contents. He has photocopies of pages from clearly old and worn books, notes taken from him interviewing locals, complete with their numbers and addresses. There were even satellite maps of the swamp with markers to indicate what he labeled as sightings and historical locations. From reading it all, it seemed like he had put together a conspiracy theory that an 18th century pirate had buried his treasure in the swamp, and his ghost haunts the location to protect the treasure. We discussed the matter for a while, and I conclude that he is an adamant believer in his theory. He explains that after what he experienced, he had to come up with some explanation to it all. We begin to talk about what happened. A brief time back, he was on duty patrolling the swamps. He was on the lookout for teenagers out there partying. Sure enough, after a time, he found just that. He was going to make his presence known, but before he could, he saw the teens start to panic. One of them, a teenage male around 15 years old, was swinging something around at the other people. He was wearing a Letterman jacket and had a strong build. Cautiously, the park ranger approached the group to defuse the situation. The other teenagers saw him and began to scream for his help. They said that their friend had found some old sword in the mud and started to attack them after he picked it up. Sure enough, looking in the young man's hands, he saw what appeared to be a rusty cutlass being wielded by him as he swung it around wildly. Steadily, the park ranger pulled his sidearm and began to shout for the teen to drop his weapon. That is when he saw something that shook him. Behind the teenager was a figure just a few inches higher than him. It was incorporeal, but it could still faintly be seen. It looked like a man dressed in colonial attire with a tricorn hat. The figure looked like he was in a state of decomposition. His face had rotted away to reveal a skull. Moss was layered over his torn and rotted clothes. The sudden appearance of a specter was horrifying on its own, but when the ranger realized something, the true terror sunk in. Every move the teen had made, so too did the figure. When he swung an arm, then the rotted corpse did so as well. When he moved, it moved. The spirit was piloting the boy. The park ranger looked at me with shame. I ran. I left those kids behind. Mother of God. He placed his hands over his face and tilted his head down to hide it from me. In shame, I imagine. The ranger, in his disgust at himself, told me that he just turned tail and ran for his truck. He said that he could hear the teenagers running in all directions, but that he did not look back. He did not radio the situation in. He just left. It was the next morning that he finally went to report the incident to his superiors. To his surprise, the teens from the night before had called the police. They did so after they left. It was mentioned that the teenager with the sword had apparently gained his composure and dashed to his car with the sword in hand. He drove off into the night. When the ranger heard this report, he came clean about his involvement and his cowardice. They put him on leave without pay. Now in the present, we finished up the interview and I left him. He gave me copies of his research. I turned them over to my contact alongside my report. Before I left, the man asked me if I believed his story, if I thought he was a coward. It doesn't matter, was my answer. What matters is to him, there was now a Waycross teenager with a haunted pirate sword out there in the ether. I noted his concern on my report. This was last year. Since then, there has not been any updates that I have heard of, only that now there is a job opening in the Okefenokee Park Services. But according to my colleagues, there has been some urban legend about the story spread in the local area. So, I recently moved to Wisconsin and wanted to explore the back country around 2 falls ago. So I took a trip from the south to Superior, mostly off-road and on fire roads and whatnot. On my second night there, I was in the North Woods and it was getting pretty late, so I was on a back road in heavy forest and decided to just pull over and find a spot to sleep in my truck. I went down a dirt road, probably 2 miles or so down the dirt road. At this point, it was very dark. It was roughly around 8 p.m. and there was absolutely no one around for miles. I found a trail in the forest and drove about 100 feet into the woods and parked, completely concealed from the dirt road that I was just on. I got out of my truck to assess the area, but I could not see anything as it was completely dark. I got back in the truck and set up for the night. About an hour into watching a movie on my phone, I heard a sound that sounded like a woman screaming, and my dog in the back heard it too. I grabbed my pistol, turned on all of my lights, and opened up the door to see what it was. Mind you, absolutely no one knew that I was out there and was far away from civilization. I did not see anyone or hear anyone, so I ducked it back into my truck. I was a little freaked out, but figured that maybe it was just wildlife, I don't know. I tried to rationalize it because I knew it would not do me any good being shit scared for the rest of my time there. About an hour later, I was falling asleep and I felt my truck move as if someone really heavy or with a lot of strength was pushing on it. Again, my dog woke up too, so I knew that this was not my imagination. I did not turn on any lights or make a sound, but my dog seemed really uneasy. I told myself that if I heard anything else, I would get the hell out of Dodge. Well, I ended up falling asleep, and around midnight, I woke up to my dog growling, and it happened again. I put on my boots and hopped in the driver's seat and got the hell out of there. As I was driving out of there, I went around a corner on the dirt road, and I'm not sure if it was my imagination or what, but I swear I saw a tall, skinny thing running off the road as I came around the corner. It took me about 30 minutes to get down the road, because I continued down the original dirt road and did not go back the way I came. By this point, it was raining pretty hard, and I did not feel comfortable being anywhere dark. I drove for around an hour, and I finally found a gas station and ended up just staying there for the night. I have never been so scared in my entire life, and let me tell you, it takes a heck of a lot to get me feeling that way. I don't really know what that was, but I know it was not human, whatever was out there. I know that much.